What is the use for built-in graphic card on a gaming motherboard? Many motherboards marketed as gaming has an integrated Intel graphic cards. Examples are the Asus B150i Pro Gaming/Wi-Fi/Aura and the Gigabyte GA Z170N Gaming 5, but these are just a couple of many. Note the gaming word in their respective names. Now I understand that if you want to build a gaming PC, most likely you would opt for NVIDIA or AMD. This is because integrated video do not have a chance to compare with higher-end NVIDIA/AMD offerings. Correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that putting in an integrated graphics into a motherboard increases its cost. So there must be a reason why manufacturers do this. It looks to me that putting an integrated CU on a gaming MB is more of a rule rather than an exception. I however cannot figure it out, what this integrated graphic is good for. Could you please explain what it can be used for? I'm guessing the intentional use, but any other possible uses too, given that for a gaming PC one is most likely to utilize an external CU? If you think any of my assumptions are wrong, please point that out. Since the whole thing does not make a lot of sense to me, it is quite likely that it's my assumptions that are wrong somewhere.
There are few wrong assumptions and they led you to wrong conclusions. Many motherboards marketed as gaming has an integrated Intel graphic cards. The graphic card is on CPU. Intel made this decision, not motherboard maker. When buying Intel, CU cannot be avoided. I understand that putting in an integrated graphics into a motherboard increases its cost. It depends on what you're looking at. If you look at price of chips alone, the costs are not groundbreaking. On the 775 platform the CU was integrated in chipsets, so some had integrated CU while others were genuinely lacking the processing power. However, the low-end chipsets with CU, e.g. G41, were actually cheaper than high-end chipsets without CU, e.g. P45. So we can conclude that while integrated card must increase the price of a chip, it's not really enough to justify cost of making two lines of chips, with and without. This is probably why Intel decided to put a CU on every single consumer CPU. Now, since the CU is already on the silicon, we can consider the costs that can be decided by motherboard designer. If he wants to make the CU work, he adds the connectors, probably the most expensive part of implementing onboard CU these days, traces, and a handful of dirt cheap passive components like those tiny resistors and capacitors. Those costs are still negligible. If we were talking about lowest in budget motherboard, axing few dollars would probably be at least put under serious consideration, but on a high-end motherboard that is already expensive, any possible savings are negligible. This is because integrated video do not have a chance to compare with higher-end NVIDIA/Radeon offerings. I cannot really call you wrong on this one. With high-end they can't compare. However, the old wives' tale that integrated PCs are useless isn't true anymore. There are two desktop Intel processors, with an 1150 Broadwell, Core i5-5675C and Core i7-5775C, that have integrated Iris Pro Graphics 6200 that was a shock when it was released in Q2 2015. Its performance is comparable to low-end discrete CU, so it can be actually used to play most games on lower detail. If you're a gamer on tight power or space budget, e.g. console-sized living room PC, I believe this would be a way to go. This integrated CU is probably quite expensive, that's why it's seen only on $276 CPU. There is also an elephant in the room here. I believe you've assumed that gaming means top performance. Well, it does not. It's simply a marketing strategy. Nobody is really able to tell what gaming label means, except that it features aggressive styling and a higher price tag. basically a premium product. So, when in doubt, just add every feature you can and you'll have one more point on feature list. Like pretty RGB lights that most users will probably lock up in the case and shove under the desk to be never seen again, or shiny metal over PC slot that does nothing but looks cool. Seriously, lights? How are they in any way useful in gaming? I can't believe you questioned integrated COO while there are lights on the Mobo.
There's a few. Firstly, nearly every modern single mainstream 1 processor has it integrated on-die COO. The chipset supports it. Essentially your only cost is the traces and connectors, so it's a free feature you can design in, unlike older designs. Interestingly, many of the Sandy and Ivy Bridge era Intel chipsets outside the Z series made you pick one or the other, H series, or didn't have onboard video, P series. Many earlier processor families used a PC slot for an onboard chip, but most integrated graphics is on die. Modern integrated COOs do neat stuff like quick sync, which mean even with a discrete card the IPU your core can be working. With earlier drivers you needed a display, or a dummy display, but you can set up quick sync to work without one for faster transcodes or video playback. I'm sure AMD has something similar on their APUs, but I've not used them recently. They're somewhat more powerful than Intel's models, and paired with a discrete Radeon might do switchable graphics to save power. It's also handy if your main video card's blown and you don't have a spare. I seriously found this useful with my last PC, which had GPU failure. Sure, you can replace it, but it's totally worth it to be able to check just by yanking out the old card and changing the output the monitor is plugged into. So, in short, all the pricey stuff is already there and Intel insists, so why not add a cheap feature? One I'd consider most Intel ULGA 115X processors, and AMD APUs to be mainstream. The AMD FX series and Intel ULGA 2011 are enthusiast-focused, though the FX series kinda overlaps with Intel's mainstream products on price. AMD fans may disagree. As of 2018, things get a bit more complex. Intel's Core i3 and i5s are solidly mainstream. The i7 and i9 batches have mainstream and server-inspired models. As for AMD, Ryzen's the mainstream and Threadripper is enthusiast.
Could you please explain what it can be used for? I'm guessing the intentional use, but any other possible uses too, given that for a gaming PC one is most likely to utilize an external COO? There are 2 uses I can think of for integrated video and enthusiast hardware. It can drive an additional monitor. Have 1 or 2 monitors driven by the expensive CPU. Use those for your games that demand performance. Drive an extra monitor off the integrated video and use that for email and web browsing. Modern high-end cards tend to be able to drive more and more monitors, but I still think this is a valid point. My primary system has a monitor I use to keep up a web browser while gaming. It is great for having a wiki, forum, or arcade up with information I can use in the game. My COO has enough outputs that I can drive it off the primary video. If it did not, I would not hesitate to plug it into the integrated video connector. Troubleshooting if your COO is damaged. You still have backup video to use your system while troubleshooting your primary video, or while ordering a replacement and waiting for it to arrive.
Sometimes when you upgrade your graphic cards, your card's driver software might not match, so you have to use the graphic card in motherboard to start your PC and get the driver.